The first fear in human history. Let's take a moment to delve into the Genesis story from the Bible. As soon as Adam committed a sin by violating God's law in the Garden of Eden, he attempted to hide himself with the excuse that he was naked. We might wonder, though, why he chose to hide from God in the first place. It can be surmised that Adam felt fear, believing that God would punish, harm, or even kill him for his transgression. And this fear caused him to immediately sense death. Instinctively, he thought that hiding would be the best solution to alleviate the fear in his mind. However, this way of dealing with his fear was not in line with God's plan, and ultimately not the solution to his fear of death. As mere humans, there was no self-solution for Adam and Eve's transgression. The resolution depended entirely on the Creator, God. Addressing the committed sin and obtaining forgiveness for violating God's commandment was solely at God's discretion. Ironically, humanity continues to hide and escape from God in an attempt to solve the problem of fear. But this problem cannot be resolved through human efforts alone. In reality, the deeper we hide, the further we escape, and the harder we strive to achieve in our lives, the stronger we feel the fear of death. This demonstrates that there is no exit or solution that can be found solely through human means. In Genesis chapter 3 verse 10, Adam said, "I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked. So, I hid." Undoubtedly, the feeling of fear and shame at being naked before God was the result and evidence of sinning against Him. This fear emerged from within Adam's mind, who had transgressed against God. The fear and shame that Adam experienced were direct consequences of his actions and the broken relationship with his Creator. In the Bible, we witness the first instance of fear in human history, as it occurred within Adam's mind when he sinned against God. We may ask ourselves, what kind of feeling is fear, and what is its relationship to death through disobedience to God's command? Furthermore, who instilled this feeling of fear in Adam? While there may not be definitive answers, it is clear that fear is directly connected to death itself. In this context, fear can be understood as a feeling of separation from God, resulting from the disconnection between the individual and the Creator. When the relationship with God is disrupted or severed, fear emerges as a consequence of that distance, and it becomes intertwined with the concept of death. In essence, fear represents the absence of God's presence and guidance, as well as the realization of one's vulnerability in the face of mortality. Indeed, when humans were created, God designed them to be inextricably connected to their Creator, the ultimate provider. Without this original source, it's natural for humans to feel the absence of God and experience a sense of fear. This fear can be understood as a fundamental consequence of disconnection from God. Thus, it can be concluded that fear within us represents a state of disconnection from God and the absence of God's presence. Consequently, the fear of death is tied to the feeling of not having God, our Creator, in our lives. As a result, escaping the constant fear of death seems impossible without re-establishing that connection to God and restoring His presence within ourselves. Indeed, in the biblical story, it is evident that the fear of death emerged naturally, instinctively, and automatically within Adam after the incident. The cause of this fear can be traced back to the breaking of his relationship with God. When Adam disobeyed God's command, the connection between them was severed, leading to a sense of fear and dread. This fear arose from the disconnection from God, as the loss of that relationship made Adam realize his vulnerability and the reality of death. Therefore, it is the broken relationship with God that led to the fear of death in Adam. Somehow, I can deduce that disconnection with God is death itself. Instinctively, Adam realized that the broken relationship with God, who is the real provider of life, would eventually cause him to lose everything he had been enjoying in the Garden of Eden. Since then, the fear of death has started in him, his descendants, and all humankind. It has been reigning over us from birth to the end of each life, consciously and subconsciously, continuously. I believe this is the origin of the first instance of the fear of death. The fear of death emerged from the broken relationship with God at the place and moment when the incident occurred with our ancestors in the Garden of Eden. This is the origin of fear that I want to share with all my fellow human beings on Earth. Now, we continue to be aware of the fear of death through our gut feelings, which are deeply implanted in our souls. All humans have the intuition to interpret various situations from within ourselves and try to escape the feeling of the fear of death. So, in the book of Genesis, Adam understood that according to the law, he lost the relationship with the Creator, the real provider of life, due to committing sin. The fear entered his soul right away, and as a result, he hid himself. Genesis chapter 3, verse 8 says, "Then the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord God as he was walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and they hid from the Lord God among the trees of the garden." In Genesis chapter 3 verse 19, we see a clear sentence directed toward the man who had committed sins in the Garden of Eden. It says, "By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return." Can you imagine the fear and the dreadful feeling that Adam must have experienced when he was sentenced to death at that very moment? The title of this book is The Fear of Death. Isaac G. Lee presents